Secrets in St Barts Part 1. Chapter 1, The Island of Secrets. The plane descended like a silver arrow, slicing through clouds into turquoise. Camille pressed her forehead to the oval window, eyes white as St Barts unfurled below her, emerald hills dropping into white sand crescents, water so blue it looked painted, villas perched like secrets along cliffsides. It was another world. A world that did not belong to her. She clutched the leather strap of her satchel, the only luggage she carried besides her knives, and whispered a silent reminder, "You're here to cook, nothing else." Invisible. Professional. The instructions had been clear when her agency called 2 weeks ago, a private contract, a discreet billionaire family, no press, no photographs, no gossip. "They want a chef who knows how to blend in," her recruiter had said, voice sharp with warning. "This isn't a job. It's an audition. Do not make waves." Camille had laughed, because what waves could a private chef possibly make? Now, as the driver opened the door of the sleek black SUV waiting for her at the airport, her laughter felt naive. The road wound higher and higher into the hills, palm fronds blurring past the window. And then, the villa. It wasn't a house so much as an empire carved into stone. Infinity pools spilled into the horizon. Marble staircases twisted like ribbons through manicured gardens. Glass walls reflected the sky itself, turning the villa into something less built and more conjured. In the driveway, 2 Aston Martins, a white Ferrari, and staff moving with quiet, practiced grace. Camille stepped out of the car, adjusting her white linen blouse and simple black slacks, suddenly aware of how small she looked here, a worker bee in a hive built of money. Inside, the villa smelled of salt air and orchids. The kitchen was cathedral-sized, with polished steel counters and a wall of glass opening onto the sea. She set her knives on the marble island, the steel clinked loud in the hush. "This is your kingdom," said the head housekeeper, a severe woman with silver hair pulled into a chignon. "Meals will be private. Family only. You'll prepare 3 courses, always plated. Do not disturb them outside the dining hours. And most important," she paused, eyes pinning Camille. "Keep your head down. They do not like the staff becoming curious." Camille nodded quickly. Of course. But curiosity had already taken root. Because even in the first few hours, as she unpacked her spices and prepped a menu of fresh caught mahi-mahi with mango salsa, she felt it, that sense of being watched. A presence. And then, as she stepped onto the terrace to collect herbs from the potted garden, she saw him. At the far edge of the infinity pool, half in shadow, a man leaned against the glass railing. Tall. Broad-shouldered. A cigarette glowing between his fingers, though it seemed out of place in paradise. His white shirt was undone at the collar, sleeves rolled carelessly. He looked like he belonged to the villa the way storms belong to the ocean, inevitable, dangerous, magnetic. Their eyes met. Brief. Electric. Camille's breath caught. She looked away first, pretending to fuss with the basil. When she turned back, he was gone. But his gaze lingered, a weight she carried back into the kitchen with her. Chapter 2, First Glance, First Flame. Dinner service was meant to be routine. Camille worked in silence, her knives moving in practiced rhythm over the cutting board. Mahi-mahi fillets glistened under the low kitchen lights, the skin still smelling faintly of sea and salt. She worked barefoot now, the marble was cool against her soles, the only sound the hiss of oil heating in a pan. The villa's staff had vanished into their duties, maids folding linens, gardeners trimming hedges, the butler arranging bottles of Bordeaux like soldiers in formation. The family themselves dined late, always after sunset. Tonight's order had been simple, a feast. Light, elegant. No interruptions. Camille plated with precision, ceviche in glass cups, mahi-mahi seared golden and kissed with mango, fresh papaya sorbet for dessert. Every color glowed like paint against porcelain. She carried the platters out herself, an unspoken test of trust. The dining terrace opened to the Caribbean night. White lanterns swung from the beams, throwing soft pools of light onto a table set with crystal and orchids. Beyond it, the sea stretched endless, waves catching silver under the moon. And there he was again. The man from the pool. Seated at the far end of the table now, in a navy suit that clung too perfectly to have been chosen carelessly. The shadows of the lantern light carved sharp planes across his jaw. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't even pretending to listen to the woman at his side, who was laughing too loudly at her own joke. He was watching Camille. Her hands stilled on the platter. For a moment, just a moment, the room shrank. She felt the heat of his gaze as if it brushed her collarbone, lingered at her wrist. She set the dishes down carefully, bowing her head as if the food demanded reverence, though her pulse thundered. The patriarch, silver-haired and commanding, gestured approval. Magnifique. The chef has surpassed herself. Polite applause from the table. But Camille's skin prickled, not at the praise. At him. He hadn't clapped. He hadn't looked away. Later, when the guests lingered over wine and Camille cleared plates, she felt it again, that tether pulling her eyes back to the far end of the table. This time, he leaned back in his chair, cigarette unlit between his fingers, lips curved in something almost like defiance. Their eyes locked. No smile. No words. Just fire caught in stillness. Camille swallowed, cheeks flushing. She dropped her gaze, busying herself with stacking plates she didn't need to touch. The butler cleared his throat softly beside her. Mademoiselle, discretion. She nodded, heart hammering. Discretion. Yes. But the flame had already been lit. When she returned to the kitchen, the air was thick with the scent of mango and smoke. She pressed her palms against the cold marble counter and whispered to herself. He's nothing to you. Nothing at all. But even as she scrubbed the last plate and packed away her knives, she could still feel his gaze burning on her skin, a memory too sharp to ignore. And though she would never admit it aloud, Camille already knew. This villa wasn't just paradise. It was a trap. And she had just stepped into the fire. Chapter 3, The Forbidden Dinner. The invitation arrived folded in cream linen paper, carried by the butler like a secret. Camille stared at it, hands still dusted with flour from rolling out paparazzi for the lunch quiches. The note was handwritten in soft black ink, the script sharp but elegant. Chef Camille, your presence is requested for dinner on the terrace this evening. A private family affair, you will dine as guest, not staff. M. Delacroix. She blinked. Guest. Chefs were not guests. Especially not in villas like this, with families like them. The butler cleared his throat. You'll be expected at 8. Cocktail attire. He didn't explain. She didn't ask. But her heart began to thrum like a distant drumbeat. At 7:59, Camille stood alone in front of the long mirror in the staff wing. Her dress was simple, midnight blue silk that grazed the tops of her knees, found years ago in a Paris thrift shop and too elegant for anywhere she'd ever worked. Her hair was pulled back loosely, tendrils escaping to frame her face. No heels, just soft leather flats. She looked almost anonymous, but quietly radiant. She didn't look like the help. She didn't look like she belonged, either. Which meant she looked exactly how she felt. The terrace had been transformed. The usual long dining table had been replaced by a circular one draped in white linen and flanked by flickering lanterns. Wine glasses sparkled like crystal constellations. The sea beyond shimmered as though the stars had spilled into it. Luc Delacroix sat at the table already, alone. Not the father. Not the fiancé. Just him. He wore a white linen shirt, open at the collar, sleeves rolled. Casual, but immaculately so. As if the air itself dressed him. He rose as she approached. You came. Camille nodded, wary. I wasn't aware declining was an option. A smile flickered at the corners of his mouth. You're French. You know as well as I do that a dinner invitation is never really about food. She tried not to smile. Failed. He gestured to the seat beside him. Please. Dinner began not with conversation, but silence. A server, one Camille didn't recognize, flown in perhaps just for this, poured white wine chilled to perfection. Another placed amuse-bouches on delicate porcelain, truffle mousse, sea urchin toast points, an herb tartlet that smelled faintly of lavender. Luc lifted his glass. To unexpected company. She raised hers in return. To questions without answers. Their glasses touched with the softest chime. For a time, they talked. Not deeply. Not yet. He asked about her favorite wine. She asked if he actually liked truffles. He told her he once dropped out of university just to prove a point. She told him she once ran a pop-up kitchen out of a van in Montmartre. They laughed. But beneath every word, something crackled, like the first hiss of sugar hitting flame. Halfway through the meal, he leaned closer. His voice dropped. I haven't seen you smile before. Camille met his eyes. That's because you've been looking with your jaw clenched and your mouth shut. Luc's laugh, low and surprised, rippled across the table. She didn't laugh back. But her eyes were dancing. I don't usually dine with the staff, he said. I don't usually dine with my employer's sons, she replied. And yet. A moment of stillness stretched between them. The kind that bends but doesn't break. The final course was served, dark chocolate mousse with espresso crumble, but neither of them touched it. The air had thickened, grown slow. The way his gaze lingered on her mouth made her heart stutter. The way her fingers brushed his as she reached for the wine made him forget where he was. And then, a noise. The sliding of a door. A shadow in the archway. Juliet. Tall. Elegant. Clad in ivory silk. She did not speak. She didn't need to. Her stare sliced across the terrace like a blade. Not at Luc. At Camille. Luc straightened. The charm vanished from his expression like smoke in wind. Camille stood abruptly, napkin falling from her lap. Thank you. For dinner. He said nothing. Neither did Juliet. But Camille's cheeks burned all the way back to the kitchen, a fire lit not by shame, but by temptation. She should have never sat at that table. She should have never smiled at him. But now. Now it was too late. Chapter 4, Whispers at Midnight. The villa was silent, except for the sea. Waves licked the cliffs below with a slow, rhythmic hush, not loud, but present, as if even the ocean were holding its breath. Camille couldn't sleep. She lay in the small guest wing bed, linen sheets twisted around her legs, the ceiling fan murmuring above her like a secret. But her thoughts spun in endless, dizzying circles. She had barely tasted the wine at dinner, yet her body burned like she was drunk. From heat. From adrenaline. From him. Luc de Lacroix. He wasn't supposed to be like that. Charming. Attentive. Curious. And yet, beneath the easy arrogance, she'd seen something else, something colder, buried deep. A loneliness maybe. Or a war he was still fighting. She sat up, breath uneven. The kitchen would be dark. She could slip in for water, clear her head, maybe find sleep on the other side. She didn't expect to find him there. The kitchen was lit only by the under-counter lights, casting a low golden glow over the marble surfaces. Luc stood at the edge of the island, shirt half-buttoned, sleeves rolled, a glass of scotch in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "You always make your rounds at midnight?" he asked. Camille paused in the doorway. "I thought I was alone." "You were." He turned now, slowly, not startled, but as if he'd expected her. His eyes swept over her, bare feet, navy silk pajama pants, white tank top. She hadn't dressed to be seen. But suddenly, she was. She walked past him to the sink, filled a glass with water, pretending the space between them didn't shimmer with unspoken words. Luc watched her. "I offended you?" "No," she said softly. "You surprised me." A pause. "I meant what I said," he replied. She turned, leaning against the counter, water glass cradled in both hands. "Which part?" "That you're the only real person here." Camille's throat tightened. He stepped closer, slowly, like he didn't trust himself not to cross the invisible line between them. "My family, they curate their lives like art galleries. Every emotion pre-approved. Every moment staged. But you," his voice dropped. "You don't wear a mask." Camille let out a quiet laugh, bitter at the edges. "I don't have the luxury of pretending. Maybe that's what I envy most." Their eyes locked. And in that heartbeat of silence, something ancient passed between them, recognition, maybe. Or fire. He set his glass down. "Do you want to see something?" Camille hesitated. Every cell in her body screamed don't. But her voice betrayed her. "Yes." He led her outside, barefoot, past the moonlit pool, down a narrow stone path behind the villa. Palm trees swayed above, and the wind carried the scent of salt and night-blooming jasmine. They stopped at a secluded cliffside terrace, hidden from the main house. No lights. Just the moon. Below, the ocean gleamed, endless and black. "I come here to breathe," he said. Camille looked at him, not the heir, not the guest of honor, but the man. "Luc," she whispered, but the warning in her voice didn't sound convincing, not even to her. He turned toward her, his face illuminated by moonlight, and for the first time, she saw the rawness in him, the desire he tried to hide. Their bodies were inches apart. She didn't move. Neither did he. But the air between them pulsed, thick with tension. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should I." His hand brushed against hers, not a grab, not a pull. Just a touch. A silent question. Camille closed her eyes. And then, footsteps. Voices in the distance. Someone from the villa, calling Luck's name. Sharp. Distant. He didn't flinch. But Camille did. The spell shattered. I should go, she said quickly. Luck didn't stop her. But his voice followed her as she stepped away. Camille, he said softly, a promise etched into 2 syllables. She didn't turn back. But her pulse pounded with every step. By the time she slipped back into her room, the sheets were still cool. But she wasn't. She pressed her palm to her chest, trying to calm the rhythm. Stay invisible, she reminded herself. But it was too late. Because in the dark, on a cliff top drenched in moonlight, she had seen a man the world thought they knew, and he had seen her. And now, neither of them could pretend anymore. Chapter 5, The Socialite's Arrival. The next morning dawned too brightly. The sun shot shafts of gold through the sheer curtains in Camille's room, igniting her senses before she was ready. Her body was sore, not from work, but from the tension that had wound her so tight the night before. Her thoughts still swirled with the cliffside, the hush between them, the press of Luck's hand. She hadn't slept. And now, sunlight poured in like judgment. Camille kept herself busy with prep, slicing blood oranges for the breakfast buffet, simmering vanilla beans into syrup. But even the scent of fresh brioche rising in the oven couldn't stop the unease prickling her spine. Something had changed. Not in the villa. In the air. And then she heard it, the shrill hum of an engine, smooth and expensive, winding its way up the cliffside road. Camille turned her head just in time to see it pull into the driveway, a white vintage convertible, top down, designer luggage strapped in the back like props on a photoshoot. From the passenger seat, a woman emerged. She wore white, a linen jumpsuit cinched at the waist, large sunglasses that concealed half her face, and red lips so sharp they could have drawn blood. Her hair was honey blonde, swept up into a low chignon. Her heels clicked on the stone like punctuation. The villa staff froze. Juliet, someone whispered. She didn't need to be announced. Her presence did it for her. Luck met her on the steps. Camille saw it from the kitchen window, half hidden behind a row of basil pots. He stepped out slowly, almost reluctantly, as Juliet leaned in to kiss both of his cheeks. Not his lips. Cheeks. Camille saw that detail, and it lodged like a splinter in her mind. Juliet said something that made Luck shift his weight, rub the back of his neck. Camille couldn't hear it, but she didn't need to. The tension in his shoulders said enough. Juliet swept into the house like a storm cloud wrapped in silk. Within an hour, the entire villa had changed. Staff walked faster. Voices lowered. The poolside lounges were rearranged twice. The champagne fridge was restocked. Camille was asked to prepare a separate detox brunch for Madame Juliet, who didn't eat gluten, meat, dairy, or shade-grown coffee. Camille obliged. Silently. Furiously. That afternoon, she carried a chilled watermelon mint gazpacho to the garden patio, where Juliet lounged beneath a parasol like a queen surveying her court. Luck sat beside her, dressed too formally for the weather, pressed slacks, long sleeves. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Camille approached the table, her steps careful. Juliet didn't look up. Camille set the tray down. Your lunch, madam. Chef Camille, is it? Juliet's voice was soft. Parisian. Deadly. Camille froze. Yes. Juliet finally looked at her, pulling her sunglasses down to reveal ocean-colored eyes, narrowed like knives. I've heard of you, she said. Camille didn't respond. Paris. That pop-up kitchen in the 18th. The food was, she paused. Rustic. Thank you, Camille said evenly. Juliet tilted her head. You must be very talented to get a contract like this. Camille didn't flinch. I was hired to cook. Of course. Juliet lifted a spoon of gazpacho to her lips. And yet, you seem so visible. Luc stirred beside her, the clink of his fork loud in the tension. Camille straightened. If there's anything you need, madam, don't hesitate to ask. She turned to go, but not before catching Luc's eyes. They were unreadable. Guarded. But beneath that, regret. Back in the kitchen, Camille slammed the pantry door harder than she meant to. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She sliced limes until her fingers burned. Because now, she understood the stakes. This wasn't just attraction anymore. It was danger. Because the socialite had arrived. And she saw everything. That's the end of this part, but trust me, the next one is even more thrilling. We drop fresh episodes every day, so don't miss out. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.